right now, Iowa farmers get $1.3 billion with a B, just in Iowa, one state, $1.3 billion a year in ag subsidies with corn and soybeans. What that means is the incentive, or even the mental freedom to say, I don't think I'll grow corn next year. I think I'd like to grow amaranth or spelt or icorn, whatever, some strange other thing, or pasture chickens, or convert it to grass and raise cows. Those options don't even enter the mind of a farmer, because the farmer has become a complete dependent on the subsidy teat, if you will, and is sitting there nursing off of the taxpayer dole. And so not only is it a market manipulation, it becomes a de facto creativity hurdle for the average farmer, even if the farmer would like to do something else. I'm tired of this, or I see my land eroding. I don't see any earthworms anymore. No songbirds are around because all the chemicals I'm spraying. I want to do something else. But they are held captive in this nefarious net of subsidy programs.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in. 600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Joel, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dr. Ben. How about you?
Oh, I'm so excited to be sitting down with you and so thankful. I'm sitting down with a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer.
That's right. That's right. All the above.
All the above. I tell you, you're definitely a brother from a different mother, a brother of Christ. And I tell you, I am so, like I said, thankful to be sitting down with you. I'm halfway through The Pigness of Pigs, and my all 5 kids of mine have been influenced by your work of, they had to listen to, we took a road trip here back last year, and we drove down to Florida from Nebraska, and the whole way we listened to You Can Farm. And I'm telling you, we were so inspired. I wanted to get a bunch of broilers. I'm like, we can do this. The conversation here, really, I just want to talk about, there's so many things that we can talk about, and I know we have a limited time here. But one thing that I really want to talk to you about is, the United States Department of Aggravation, right? The USDA, and just the regulations and restrictions, the monopolization of our farming industry, and how backwards our whole farming industry has gone from the way God really intended it to be, and why this matters. And so, I just want to open up the gates with you. And really the theme of our conversation today is government overreach. Obviously, I'm in the health field. I've seen it in our vaccine industry, the foundation of lies that this whole vaccine philosophy has been built upon. And so I want to talk to you out of the gates. What have you seen, and what is some of the biggest violations in a world of compromise and convenience? I mean, really, how do you hold the line between biblical stewardship and really modern farming trends?
Sounds like we're going to be in for a good one. All right. So, so it's not just the farm. What it does, it affects the food supply. So if you believe, like I do, that we should have more choice in the food system, more access to local food, neighbors' food, and not have access only to industrial industrial food, then what we need is more participants. We need to make it easier for people to purchase alternative type food. Now, one of the interesting things is, and this has kind of been a new thought for me in the last couple of months, 35 years ago when I started doing media interviews, I erroneously, I'm not a prophet, I know that now, but I erroneously predicted that by now people would be in their kitchens, and we had the rise of the farmers market movement, the local food movement. I mean, Michelle Obama had know your farmer, know your food. He had a garden on the White House lawn, and man, we thought that by now people would actually be in their kitchens and doing things. But what we got in the last 35 years is a proliferation of convenience food. We got Hot Pockets and Lunchables and squeezable Velveeta cheese and all sorts of and now moving into ultra processed, because in that period of time, essentially the chemists in the tobacco company laboratories have been co-opted now into the food conglomerates, and so these tobacco chemists are formulating food, and that's where we're getting the ultra processed and all that. The fact is, the horse of convenience, if you will, has left the stable, and I'm done trying to tell people, no, you don't want convenience. What we need to do is allow people to buy nutritious convenience. A chicken pot pie does not have to have MSG and red dye 29 in it, and a host of and glycerol and a host of unpronounceable ingredients. It doesn't need to have that. And so what we desperately need right now is a way for farmers to be able to access the retail convenience dollar, because that's where the money is. But in between that transaction is a host of food police, I call them food police, the regulatory environment that is highly scale prejudicial. And what it means is it's much easier to comply with food safety, food regulations if you're big than if you're small, which is inherently unfair and unjust. But what it does is it precludes small players and innovation from accessing the marketplace.
Right.
And so I mean, I'll give you, since we're on chicken pot pie, which I happen to love chicken pot pie. I think it's one of the most, I mean, I could just live the rest of my life on chicken pot pie. I mean, it's got veggies and dairy and meat, and it's just a good thing, and just a little bit of dough. So it's a pretty complete thing. So a couple of years ago, we had a young lady here who was a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and she wanted to do chicken pot pies for us, and our customers are desperate for it. They would love polyface chicken pot pies.
I would love that too. Just let
Yeah.
just for the record.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So we have a great commercial kitchen here that we use for cooking for events and for our own on-farm dinners. We have an on-farm chef who cooks for us the evening meals Monday through Friday when the stewards are here in the summertime from May 1 to September 30. So we can, all 25 of us who live on the farm can eat communally in the evening. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it's a nice big inspected kitchen. So the health department comes out, say, let's just get this inspected. We make these chicken pot pies. Okay, so they look at it and say, "Oh, this is a great, great kitchen, but where's your bathroom?" I said, "Well, we're 100 yards from our house. We have 2 in our house. Mom's got 2 in her house, I mean, we've got porta potties for people who come from town, visitors. Now we actually have nice first class bathrooms for all that. The porta potties are gone. And I said, the bathrooms are right here. Oh, no. You have to have one attached. I said, well, why? If the person making chicken pot pies is happy to take 100-yard walk, every 3 hours to go to the bathroom, what difference is it to you? I mean, we've got hand cleaning stations. We've got,
Right.
they don't have to go to the toilet here in the kitchen. They said, well, it's just the regulation. I said, wait a minute. And I said, well, what if we put a composting toilet, something out here? Oh, no. It's got to be an inspected, water-based porcelain septic, the whole 9 yards. I said, wait a minute. A food truck doesn't have that. And people prepare food in a food truck kitchen all the time. They said, yeah, that's a loophole we're trying to close. I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that if we put this kitchen on a chassis, we could make chicken pot pies and sell them? They said, yes, absolutely. All right, you're shaking your head, which is exactly what. And I said, well, maybe that's what we should do. They said, but here's the catch: you can do that in a food truck on a chassis, but then you can't sell it anywhere except through the window of the food truck. So you can't deliver it anywhere. You can't send it you can't freeze it and send it in the mail with your other stuff. It can only be sold from the food truck window. Well, obviously we were wanting to send it to our customers. We delivered several thousand families in the urban sector on a monthly drop point. We ship nationwide. We're going to freeze these things, put them in a cardboard box, freeze them, and send them with dry ice with T-bone steaks and Thanksgiving turkey and everything else that we ship. And so here we are. In order to do a chicken pot pie, we have to invest $50,000-$60,000 in a leach field, a bathroom, and all that in a facility that otherwise meets all requirements. Just to start a chicken pot pie. And this kind of thing happens all over the world. We another great example. We love to hunt around. We got a lot of white-tailed deer here, way too many actually. And so we harvest several white-tailed deer in the fall. And one of the special things we love is to take it up to an Amish Mennonite little facility up there on a farm in Dayton, Virginia, 20 miles away, and they make it into summer sausage. And so we add a little bit of pork fat to it and give it a little bit of body. And boy, there's something else I could about live on.
Right.
It is a fantastic nutrient dense thing, and what a wonderful thing for people to send with their kids to school. I mean, you could send it comes kind of in a tube about yay big, and you could just slice off about 3 wafers of that thing, send it with your kid to school, and they would have first class. But we can't sell it. We can't sell it because they're not inspected by the government. It's venison, but they're precluded by the government from doing beef summer sausage because beef is an amenable meat, and they can't have any beef in that facility. They can only do wild game because wild game comes outside the food inspection service. So they can do it for wild game, but we can't sell it. It's illegal to sell it. So, I could go on and on and on, but the fact is that these stories are everywhere, and there are thousands and thousands of farmers, especially small farmers, 5, 10, 15 acres that are ready to value add convenience. Let's stick with the chicken pot pie for their neighbors. And there are thousands and thousands of non-farm neighbors who would love the convenience of getting a good local, vaccine, hormone, GMO-free, antibiotic-free chicken pot pie, but they can't get it. And Dr. Ben, let me assure you, if anybody is listening and they think, well, they've got to keep this, they got to keep food safe. I mean, come on, we got to keep this food safe. First of all, Our hospitals right now are full of people eating quote unquote safe food
Right.
that is nutrient deficient, and that's why they're in the hospital. But number two, in our society, and I'm not going to suggest whether this is right or wrong or indifferent. I'm just going to state a fact that in our society, hazardous substances are prohibited from transaction across the board. In other words, methamphetamine, fentanyl, prescription drugs, you can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't give it away, you can't give it to your kids. The prohibition is across the board. But in food, the prohibition is only on selling. It's
Right.
legal to buy, legal to give away, legal to give to your kids. You just can't sell it. So clearly, this is not about food safety. It's not about hazard. If uninspected chicken pot pie were really hazardous, you couldn't give it away. You couldn't feed it to your kids. You couldn't buy it. But you can do all those things. All you can do is sell it. So it's a prohibition only on one narrow aspect, which shows that it's not that nobody believes this is inherently hazardous. It's just it's food safety masquerading as market control.
Right. I mean, we live in a world right now where, I mean, how backwards is it? It's easier to buy marijuana in this country than it is to raw milk.
Yeah.
Going back to the kitchen story with the regulations, it's, that's kind of salt in my wound here, because after I read your book, one of the things you said is like, get a certified kitchen on your property. I mean, we bought 10 acres in the woods and I'm zone agricultural. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. My daughter loves to bake. We can start baking things. So I start looking at getting a certified kitchen on my property. First of all, I call the assessor and he says, you can't put a certified kitchen on your property. I said, why?
Zoning.
Yeah, zoning. He
Zoning.
said you can't have any permanent fixtures that you would have in a house. I said, so what does that mean? He said, you can't have a fixed sink, a permanent sink. You can't have a permanent dishwasher. You can't have a permanent oven. So I'm like, so I can get a toaster oven? He goes, yes. I said, so I can have a portable sink? Yes. I'm like, my RV has a kitchen in there. He's like, that's fine. It's a mobile. So same thing. If I put this on,
it's a very similar. It's a very similar mentality to what I was encountering. Isn't that fascinating? So what? Yeah. So what's the rationale for this? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, is it because if it's in a food truck, if it's in a mobile thing, then you have to go with the wastewater somewhere.
right.
And if it's stationary, they're afraid your water's gonna go whatever, out on the ground. I mean, I don't.
Well,
I'd love to know the mentality of some of
Right.
these things,
Well,
because
it's government mentality for you. And this is the thing. Our government, I mean, Thomas Jefferson said the government big enough to give you everything you want and need is powerful enough to take away everything you have. And it's like, we live in a free country. Well, we should be able to raise and sell food and have the right to do that. And it's government overreach.
yeah,
And that's what this is all about. I mean,
right.
and so,
Yeah.
there's a saying out there, who controls the oil controls the economy, and who controls the food controls the people. And you mentioned it. There is a real agenda behind here, and it's big government that's interfering with our food industry, and it's almost by design. The government, they want to. I think there's another saying out there that if the people let the government decide what foods they eat, their bodies will be in soon a sorry state as those whose souls who live in our tyranny. And it's a really a backwards world. But people, we need to understand the way you farm, Joel, is, I've seen it. I've looked at your methodology of how you farm, and it's, it simplifies really so much. And, the word simplify means to remove the unnecessary. And it's, I'm so inspired and sold on the method. If people were to adopt the way you farm and steward the ground and the soil, and there would be a revival in our food industry.
Yes, there would be. And as we talk about food, and the market. So what's happened in the last 80 years is that the farmer's portion of the retail food dollar. So you go to the supermarket and you buy something. the farmer gets 8 cents of that dollar. 8 cents of that dollar. 80 years ago, the farmer got 50 cents of that dollar. Most of that is due to convenience food. But I think it's important to realize that as the farmer's share of that consumer dollar has shrunk, that means that the amount of money going into the ag sector relative to, processing, distribution, marketing, packaging, is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So what we have right now, I want to connect a couple of dots right now. One of the big elephants in the room right now in the farm sector is the aging farmer. The average farmer is now 60 years old. That means that in the next 15 years, and I'm getting this directly out of the land grant universities, the ag econ, their departments. I'm assuming I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they're good. They've got some good data. But in the next, I don't believe much else the land grant universities say, is what I'm saying. This is not an endorsement of land grant university material. But I think on this one, they're right that the average farmer is 60 years old. So what they're saying is in the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity, that's land, buildings, and machinery, all 50% of America's agriculture equity is going to change hands. Now, the question is that going to go to Vanguard, BlackRock, and Bill Gates, or the Chinese, or whatever? Or who's that going to go to? And if we look back historically, this has never happened in any civilization. Look back through the 25 civilizations of history, or any other situation. This level of agrarian equity transfer has never happened except in war. The Huns come in and take over Rome or whatever. It's only happened in conquest. Now, I'm not here, saying that we're getting ready to be conquested or going to be at war. What I am suggesting is it should give us all pause to realize that if we punch through this successional transition peacefully, we will be the first civilization in history to do so. And if you study patterns and you study cycles and historical records, that's a pretty high risk bet to assume that we would be the first civilization to do so. So this begs the question: why has this occurred? And the answer, in my view, is that when young people can't get in, old people can't get out. And so what's the hurdle to young people getting in? Well, the hurdle to young people getting in is the economic viability of a farm. If you could actually get a piece of land and make a decent living, there'd be thousands of young people, ready to jump in. And so, of course, on our farm, we've tried to ameliorate this entry level thing as much as possible with portable infrastructure and scale with duplication, not centralization, and being management intensive rather than energy and capital intensive. So I mean, I think we've definitely been able to launch some young people that otherwise would never be able to, but it's still extremely hard when you can't butcher a pig in the backyard and sell a pound of sausage to a friend at church.
Right.
We have choice in the womb in our country, choice in the bedroom, choice in the bathroom. Well, we don't have choice in the kitchen. And in my view, if I could use some loaded phrases, two consenting adults exercising voluntary freedom of choice to give their microbiome agency over its provenance should not have to ask the government's permission to engage in a food transaction. It is that simple. It really is that simple. And believe me, if we if we change this, if we allowed direct, producer consumer food transactions, thousands and thousands. I know. I meet them. I meet thousands of farmers in the U.S. Every year, and outside the U.S. Every year, that are gung ho and ready to make their farm a full time occupation. They're ready to make chicken broth, bone broth, canned soup, canned tomato soup, muffins and pot pies and whatever. I mean, all of the quote unquote convenience food that you can imagine, and do it without chemicals and without a bunch of unpronounceable ingredients. But between them and the neighbor across the fence that's desperate to buy stands a plethora of government bureaucrats that say you have to have a $500,000 facility in order to do 1 pound of whatever it is you want to do. And perish the thought that you would make yogurt or anything dairy or raw milk or raw cheese. And one other aspect of this that's a big one. I'm sure you've heard of food deserts. They're primarily an urban issue, but there are some in the rural area. But let's take an urban section. There are people that are concerned about food deserts, as I am. And so imagine in a city there's a vacant lot. Let's take a difficult situation, a single mom of 2 kids, okay, and she's living in an apartment. But she's got an entrepreneurial spirit, can do. She says, "Hey, I'm gonna do something." There's a vacant lot. She goes down and she puts in a garden there, and puts in a little bit of chicken, get some eggs, and she says, "I'm gonna make quiche." Egg quiche. That's a great convenience food. It's nutritious, and I'm going to make it for all the folks here in the apartment complex, and make a living for myself. I can stay home with my 2 kids. I can be a stay-at-home single mom. It'll change, and the kids can help in the kitchen. They can help in the garden. And have chores and get in the dirt and encounter God's creation. Okay, so she starts, and she takes her first quiche over to the neighbor across the hall. That's the first one that heard about it and said, "Man, absolutely, I want to buy your quiche." But before she can get back to her own apartment across the hall, there's 6 bureaucrats knocking on her door. Where's your HACCP plan? Where's your fire extinguisher? Where's your separate toilet? This building isn't zoned for a business. You can't have a business here. It's residential. The rafters are not commercial rafters in the roof. They have to be upgraded by 30% to be a commercial. You see where I'm going with this? Yes. I mean, and so what happens is that these dreams can't be launched because the regulations do not allow an embryonic prototype small enough to be birthed. That's the problem. When you're wanting to start a new enterprise, you have to start it small. It has to be a little baby, and you launch small. But these regulations make the launch have to be so big that the dream birth has to be so big that it's a stillbirth. And that's what we have all over this country, are thousands and thousands of dreams and potential things that would be launched. And one final thing, now I'll let you move on to your next point, but one other thing, right now we have AOC and Bernie Sanders. They're traveling the country saying we got to stop the oligarchy. Bernie Sanders, and the way that they envision to stop the oligarchy is we need more government regulations, right, more government agencies to be bigger than the oligarchy. Well, we've tried that for a century, and look where it's gotten us. Right. It's gotten us to unbelievable consolidation, centralization, and concentration in the food system. And so the way to chip away at the oligarchy is from the bottom up, to release the latent entrepreneurial desire in the countryside to actually compete with, with Nestle and with Iowa Beef Packers and Tyson and Cargill and the big processors at a community scale, at a backyard neighborhood scale. And boy, you get a bunch of little entrepreneurs with their little $100,000 and $200,000 businesses. It would be like an atomic bomb in the food system.
It'd be a revolution overnight, a revival overnight in our food industry.
Absolutely, no question, no question.
Which, I can't stress enough. People that are listening, go get the book You Can Farm. Read that book. You'll be so inspired, like I was. I mean, I'm so thankful that God blessed us with 10 acres. It's all in the woods. We have layers, and I was actually just watching some of your videos today. I'm like, oh, I need to raise my nesting boxes. They're too close to the ground. I was like, but Joel, I thought you were going to say one of the main issues with our farm industry not only is the age, but are government subsidies and how government subsidies are affecting our food industry. Can you speak on that?
Yes. Well, what the subsidies do, I mean, there are six things that are subsidized, six commodities: corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, rice, and sugar. So these six items, dating way back, were selected as needing, extra help, stabilization, whatever. In fact, 40% of the corn grown in America goes into, again, government subsidized ethanol plants. So what happens, Dr. Ben, is, as I think you're well aware, is every time the government intervenes in the marketplace and puts its finger on the scale, it warps in a generally an unseemly way the way the market functions. There's no subsidy to apples. There's no subsidy to GMO-free chicken. All right, it's only these commodities. And so what you have is entire. I mean, right now, Iowa farmers get $1.3 billion with a B, just in Iowa, one state, $1.3 billion a year in ag subsidies with corn and soybeans. What that means is that the incentive, or even the mental freedom to say, I don't think I'll grow corn next year. I think I'd like to grow amaranth or spelt or icorn, whatever, some strange other thing, or pastured chickens, or convert it to grass and raise cows. Those options don't even enter the mind of a farmer, because the farmer has become a complete dependent on the subsidy teat, if you will, and is sitting there nursing off of the taxpayer dole. And so not only is it a market manipulation, it becomes a de facto creativity hurdle for the average farmer, even if the farmer would like to do something else. I'm tired of this, or I see my land eroding. I don't see any earthworms anymore. No songbirds are around because all the chemicals I'm spraying. I want to do something else. But they are held captive in this nefarious net of subsidy programs. And in these areas, I can tell you, I've been to Iowa 2 or 3 times just this year. Interesting. And the farmers, I'm farming the government. I mean, this is a common thing.
What percentage of farmers do you think are in that system, Joel?
Boy, I don't know. I don't know what the percentage is, but when you get to the large commercial ones,
yeah,
it's most. Certainly.
Right. So you are on the outside of that. So how does the farmer that wants to farm, how do they compete with these subsidies? And you know what I mean?
Well, so what you do is that I mean, if you want to raise something else, one of the ways to compete is to start wearing the middleman hats and escape the commodity program. Let me just give you an example. If you put any commodity, grain commodity, if you put it through an animal, you just doubled its value. Okay. So what we have in American agriculture now is a highly segregated system. It's highly segregated. It's not integrated. The fertilizer comes from Russia and Morocco, and the grain is produced here to be railroad carted here for the feedlots and the chickens and to North Carolina for the pig factories, and then and what happens then is you have such a concentration of manure and urine, which are supposed to bless the land with fertility. You have such a concentration of it in one spot that it becomes a hazardous substance. So the blessing becomes a curse. And because it's not spread out across the land base. Now, people will tell me, well, they come here and they say, oh, what you're doing is nice and warm and fuzzy and it's cute, but it really can't scale. It can't feed the world. And so my answer to that is absolutely it can feed the world, but it doesn't feed the world through concentration and consolidation. It feeds the world through duplication. So on our farm now, we have, we raise these pastured poultry, these broilers in little outdoor field shelters, 10 feet by 12 feet by 2 feet high. We put 75 birds in each one. We move it every day to a clean pasture spot. And we now have, I don't know, 160 of these. We've got the equivalent of a Tyson factory chicken house. Okay. We've got the equivalent of that, but it's in 160 little modules. All right. And if you think about it, that's the way nature scales and grows. If we want more people, we don't make a bigger person, we make babies. If we want more tomatoes, we don't make a great big plant, we plant more tomatoes. If we want more chickens, we don't grow a great big chicken, we we hatch more eggs. Okay.
Right.
So God's program is absolutely scale by duplication. But in American agriculture, it's all scale by consolidation and centralization. Well, if we put 5,000 chickens in a house, can we put 10? Can we put 15? Oh, let's put 20 in a house.
Right.
And if we can put 50 pigs in a barn, well, let's put 100 pigs in a barn. Oh, can we put 1,000 pigs in a barn?
Right.
There is zero interest really in duplication. If the dairy, if the people in charge of the dairy industry, if they could have their perfect system, I can assure you, it would be a cow, the size of a half a city somewhere out in the middle of the country, in Kansas City maybe, and it would have an udder, the size of a skyscraper, and there would be trains just bringing corn and soybeans in for this big cow that eats, and there would be a 6 or 8 inch pipeline going from each teat. One would be going up to toward Pennsylvania. One would be going down toward Georgia. One would be going out toward Arizona, and one would be going up toward Oregon and Washington. And there would be one cow that would. I mean, this is the mentality.
Right. How do you combat those people that say, okay, well, we can't feed the planet. We have 7 billion people on the planet. And so if we use Joel's methods here, we can't use these methods to feed the population. That's why we have to use these giant monocrop farms.
Yeah. Yeah. So we listen, our farm is absolutely more productive per square yard than any farm that I know of. And I'm not bragging here. I'm just stating a fact, partly because we stack enterprises. like in permaculture, the same acre that we run cows across, we run broilers across, we run turkeys across, we run a millennium feather net for eggs across, we can run sheep across. They're not on the same square yard at one time, but they're there throughout the season and rotated. We run tens of thousands of animals, and we don't have a vet bill. We don't have a vet bill.
Fantastic.
I mean, we just never see one. Now, doesn't mean we never have a dead animal, but it means that we don't wake up in the morning concerned about, oh no, what's sick out there. I talk to these factory farmers that have chickens and cows, feedlots and confinement dairies and stuff, and I can assure you, their first waking thought every morning is what crisis awaits.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the paranoia around bird flu. Look at the
Yes.
paranoia around hoof and mouth and things. I mean, these guys just, I mean, and they have told me. I had one farmer that did convert. He had a confinement swine operation out in Missouri, and he converted the morning he woke up. He was a good Christian guy. He woke up in the morning. His two kids they were teenagers. They wanted nothing to do with the farm. And he woke up one morning and he realized his first waking thought was, what's wrong up at the hog house? And he said, I can't live like this. And over a 5-year period, he completely transitioned to a non-chemical, pasture-based kind of program. And he eliminated his vet bills, and he was happy about it. And guess what? Both of his kids came back and joined him in the operation because the whole mentality was a mentality of health and vibrancy and flourishing, rather than a mentality of oh no, what's going to go wrong today.
Right. I mean, think about this. That whole testimony, what you just talked about, how going back to how God created things and raising these animals in a healthy environment, that transfers over to humans as well. We are a product of our environment. We need to eat well. We need to move well. We need to think well, pray well, relate well. We can be well. It's all about our environment, but we're told that we're sick because of bad genes or bad germs. I'm old enough to remember when germophobia used to be a mental disorder, and now it's a virtue. But we live in a world where we're so scared of germs, but we're doing it backwards. And the farm, we can learn so much from the way you are farming, from these animals that are healthier because they're in an environment, they're in a healthy environment. And so I want to just ask you, because I know you're a Christian and I know you have convictions here, and I know God is using you in a big way. But how much of this corruption in our food industry is spiritual?
Well, I think it's huge, and some of it is not. Some of it I don't think is conspiratorial. I think it's just not consistently thinking through. I mean, let me give you an example. The way everything runs on this planet is the sun is the power source, SUN, and there's a great parallel to the Christian experience. SON is our power source, but anyway, that's another part of it. But the SUN, the sun, powers everything, and through chlorophyll, photosynthetic activity, it grows plants. The plants then feed microbes, fungi, animals, all sorts of things, and of course the soil, and the microbes. I mean, at 9 billion microbes per double handful of healthy soil, 9 billion microbes. I mean, these things are. It's like an underground cafe. It's like that cafe in Star Wars. Where Han Solo goes to find, and Luke Skywalker's looking around for a fast vessel. And over there in the corner, all these aliens, two-headed things and all these, things playing. That's where I see the underground, the soil is all these alien microbes, eating and being eaten and lopping off each other's ears and noses and feet and digesting and pooping, and then something else eats that. And I mean, here's the point I'm making is this: life, in order for something to live, it has to eat something. And in order to eat something, something has to die. Something has to die to be eaten by something to live. Whether this is in the plant world, animal world, microbe world, whatever. This is a fact, a foundational fact of the way the planet works. Something has to die in order for something to live. Something has to decompose. I mean, think about a compost pile. Something has to decompose before it can be regenerated into something else. Let's take chemical fertilizer. When in 1837, when Justus von Liebig, bless his heart, he was trying to figure out how to solve infertile soil, so we wouldn't starve to death. But he used his vacuum tubes in 1837 to tell the world that all of life is simply a rearrangement of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, NPK. And for the first time in up until that day, literally in human history, there was always considered a bit of a mystical, spiritual element to life. It was always something. There's a spark there. It's more than materialism.
Right.
Well, when Justus von Liebig, with his vacuum tubes, told everybody that no, this is just rearrangement of inert elements, NPK. It literally took the soul out of life, and from that day on, of course, that created the chemical fertilizer industry. So here's what I want people to appreciate. The chemical fertilizer industry is predicated on a philosophy that you can grow life without death, and you cannot have life without death. It is an ecological impossibility. And of course, there are wonderful, spiritual ramifications to that. Christ's death gave life possible, and for us to fully live, we die to self, and we take up our cross, and we serve each other, and we deny ourselves, and that's how we flourish. I mean, so I think it's not that it's a conspiracy, but when you look at the underlying philosophy, the belief system of something as basic as the chemical fertilizer program, and realize this is trying to cheat the life, death, decomposition, regeneration cycle, you realize how deeply ingrained, or how deeply both absurd and erroneous our current mechanistic food and farming system is.
Joel, I just feel like we could talk all day, and I love the wisdom that you bring to this. And there's just so much wisdom that's lost in our younger generation here, and I think God has definitely given you that wisdom in this area. But I just want to ask you, if we continue down this path, of industrialized food, nutritionally bankrupt food, centralized and regulatory overreach, I mean, what do you believe will happen to our freedom, our health, our children's future? And what's the single most important step you think we can take right now to really turn it around?
Well, I mean, what we will see is more of what we have, and what we have is not pretty. I mean, this is what is fueling the Maha movement, and RFK Jr. I mean, bless it. I don't agree with every single thing, but I'll tell you, we are having conversations at a national scale like I have not seen in my lifetime, and I am thrilled. I'm thrilled, literally, that we are starting to question. I mean, just, and it seems like every day now there is breaking new information. I mean, just this week, we just found out about the increase of autism when pregnant women take Tylenol,
right,
or anything laced with, you can help me say it,
acetaminophen. Oh my goodness, I can't say it.
Yeah, acetaminophen. I mean, it's in like 500 branded products, and Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai Hospital, there have been big ones, and they've just literally released the final report that when women who are pregnant take that
Yes.
drug, Tylenol, and all in these, that there is a 20-fold, not a 20% increase, a 20-fold increase in the chance that their baby's going to have autism.
And post-vaccination, so it creates the
Yes, and post-vaccination.
it creates the perfect storm. Tylenol taken
Yes,
post-vaccination,
yes,
and
yes.
so
Because lots of times when a child is vaccinated, they're they hurt a little bit, and so you give them Tylenol to take away the pain, and then you've got and the thing that I find that almost nobody in our culture realizes is that when the FDA says that something's safe, when they stamp it, this is okay, and I approve it, it is never, ever, ever tested in combination with other things. It is tested singly, but it's never tested in a cocktail. And this is the same in in pesticides and herbicides. When the EPA or the USDA says, glyphosate is okay, or atrazine or whatever is okay, is safe, it's never tested in a cocktail.
Right.
But in practical use, whether it's prescription drugs or whether it's herbicides and pesticides on the farm, these are always used in pairs, in duals and triples, and they're in cocktails.
100%.
And we have no way of knowing. There is zero testing on what the cocktail does. And
exactly right.
and people on a farm, people in the pharmaceutical that are taking a drug, just go along this merry way, and here we are. So the bottom line for me, to cut to the chase, would be, I don't know how many of your listeners believe Anthony Fauci.
Probably zero.
Probably not very many. But I want you to think that right now, as much as you disbelieve whatever Anthony Fauci would say if he stepped to a microphone right now and said something, that is the mentality that is still controlling our farm systems, our protocols. All of that is being run by that kind of mentality. Now, RFK Jr. is a break from that. He is a breath of fresh air. I have no idea, literally, if he will survive politically or even physically. I mean, the guy is taking on some big stuff. But I've had a couple of conversations with Callie Means, who is kind of RFK Jr. Right-hand guy. And I asked Callie, I said, so which is bigger, Big Pharma or Big Ag?
Right.
I was sure it was going to be Big Pharma. He said no. He said Big Ag is 10 times worse, 10 times bigger. And so if you look at the pushback that RFK Jr. is getting from Big Pharma, and then imagine tangling with Big Ag. See, the thing is, the Republicans, the conservative senators from Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, those red states, those conservative farm red states, at the top of the program, we started talking about subsidies. Well, they view the entire farm bill, the entire farm program, as essentially a jobs program. And if you ask, Senator Grassley or, any of these, heavy rural state senators, their mentality is that agriculture has 39 million jobs. 39 million jobs are directly as a result of American agriculture. And so they are, and of course, jobs people vote. And so the incentive to maintain the status quo, to not shake up the apple cart when your constituents believe their payroll is based on maintaining the status quo, it's very, very difficult to get anything done, anything changed. And so if I were, king for a day and I could wave a magic wand across the country and say, if I could do one thing, it would be if I were Trump right now, I would issue a food emancipation proclamation, a food emancipation proclamation to allow direct neighbor to neighbor food transactions without asking for the government's permission.
Fantastic.
The beauty of that is it does not take an agency, it does not take any regulation, it does not take any taxpayer money. All it does is offer choice. It just offers choice. And I think that is a saleable policy right now. It would offer diversity. It would offer opportunity for young people to get into farming. It would offer a profitable option for farmers who want to transition out of chemical agriculture and move into a different production model. There are so many benefits that here's my concern, Dr. Ben, and I've been privileged now at this level of my life to kind of be included in some pretty high level discussions at MAHA and Heritage Institute and the Heritage Foundation and things like this that are really have the ear of the president. And what I'm concerned about is that this wave of opportunity we're riding will be squandered in just internal battles over, well, do we outlaw this or outlaw that, or do we outlaw ractopamine in pork? Do we do we outlaw glyphosate? Do we go after this? Do we go after that? And so I'm seeing the factionalization within the movement break across pet projects and pet policy lines. And what that does is it breaks up the laser beam. And so I've proposed in some pretty high circles now I'm not kidding, the food emancipation proclamation. I can't imagine something more Trumpian than a food emancipation proclamation. And so I'm making no secrets that I'm trusting the Lord, if this is once that he wants me to do, to have a 30-minute pitch time to Trump to present this to him. I think he'd be all over it. And I can't imagine a more Trumpian thing. I mean, he is an entrepreneur. He understands market access. He understands risk. He understands young person access, all that. And he loves young people. And so and I don't love everything Trump's doing by any means, but I think that there's this little window of opportunity. And if we could actually open the floodgates of market access to the thousands and thousands of small farm entrepreneurs that are out here to offer convenience food, not just chickens and pigs, but convenience food, value-added food to their neighbors. To their neighbors, we would see absolutely a revolution in our food and farm sector, the likes of which we can't even imagine.
I love it, Joel. I think the soil for that revival is rich right now, and the people are starving for it. And I want to go back on one thing. You said the agricultural industry is 10 times worse than the farm industry, and I'm seeing that. I've been fighting the pharma cartel for a long time, trying to expose this. And, even though the ag industry is huge, we serve a big God. God is much bigger. And, and I know that.
Yes.
But I can't help but think of the farming industry, the health industry. It's all one and the same. It really does make a difference. And I've always said, what seeds are to the farmer to bring a crop, vaccines and these pharmaceuticals are to bring a profit, because I think that we vaccinate. The vaccinology is such a religion. People say, I believe in vaccines. Well, that's like saying I believe in apples. I believe in hammers. It doesn't make any sense. It becomes a religion at that point. And these are just bumper sticker slogans. But, if you look at all these doctors like Dr. Fauci and allopathic doctors, and you put them in a room and you look at a wilted plant, they're going to say we need to cut off the leaves or vaccinate the plant. But really, the wilted plant just needs water and it can be well, and our body is no different. And so that's why the foods that we consume can be the best forms of medicine or the slowest forms of poison. So I think it's vitally important that we stop compartmentalizing the body, our food industry, our farm industry, understanding that God's method is the best. Joel, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me today. I'll be praying for, God to keep bringing you influence in this area and keep using you in a mighty way as He has. Joel, can you just put a plug in where people can find you, where people can
Sure.
support you?
Sure. So I'm pretty dark on social media. I don't even have a smartphone yet. So I'm kicking and screaming on this whole deal. But our farm, Polyface Farm, Polyface, has a very comprehensive website. That's where So I do a blog and it's not on any kind of schedule. Sometimes I don't do anything for a week, and then I do 5 in a week. It just depends on what's happening and what's hot. But our website, you can get good food from us. You can come to an event. We have the Lunatic Learning Center. We host 6 to 8 events a year. We just had Brownstone here. We had Dr. Robert Malone was here. Congressman Thomas Massey. We are just really trying to be a nexus of truth seekers who can convene here and be encouraged and inspired in this day. Polyface Farms, that's our website, and you can see where I'm traveling, speaking, when we're doing events. Come for a farm tour, get food, get swag. You can get a shirt, a T-shirt that says "Compost the Bureaucrats." There's all sorts of good stuff here. So
Can I get that shirt online?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about a chicken pot pie? Can I get that sent to my house, Joel?
Yeah, boy, I wish, man. Let me tell you, as soon as we can do that, we'll be all over it. Yes, sir. We'll be all over it.
Well, Joel, thank you. Why don't you stay on here for a second? Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please share this. Pray for Joel, his influence, and go support him at Polyface Farms and get the book.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be, right, to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order. 600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?